There are two things in cosplay that I really like. One of them is moving parts, whether that's wiggling ears, eyes that follow you around the room, or moving arms. The other is birds or feathers. I don't know why. I swear it's not on purpose. I guess I just have really predictable taste when it comes to cosplay and somehow always find myself back at either angels or birds or something. Anyway, today's video is no exception. The focus is wings, but like really big, really graceful wings. Since I've noticed that a lot of the really big, beautiful cosplay wings out there also tend to be very rigid and slow moving if they do move at all, which makes sense because they're like human-sized wings, which means they're gonna need a lot of support for all of that weight that they're holding up. But I've seen a few here and there that really stuck out to me just because they seem to move and flex so gracefully and looked almost weightless. Almost like they were dancing or floating. So I want to make some that do that, and since I'm still on the Has-Been Hotel hype train, what better excuse to cosplay Lute, the exorcist angel. So before I get too carried away, hello, I'm Miss Twisted. I do cosplay and makeup and other weird and wonderful projects. And today I'm making a giant floating pair of wings for my Lute cosplay. So here's where I'm starting out. There's a lot of tutorials online for different wings for cosplay. None of them are quite what I'm after, so it is going to be a lot of trial and error for me to get it right. And I don't really have heaps, but I do have a little bit of experience making wings in general that I can try and draw on. Side note, you should go check out my previous video on my Lilith cosplay where I made some big articulating wings. The priority here is to keep things as lightweight as possible. I've heard people talk about Isolon foam as a good option for feathers just because it is so light, and while I haven't really heard about it done, just from like staring closely at some people's designs, a lot of the more flexible light wings seem to be made out of like a really thin packing foam sheet. We'll come back to those. For the frame itself, I want something that can hold a lot of weight, flex really easily, return to shape, and is very lightweight itself. So I kind of landed on fishing rods. I got a couple of these secondhand at a local op shop for like $5 each. So, you know, sustainable and really cheap. So now I've got my two main ingredients for some gravity-defying wings. Speaking of gravity-defying, you may have noticed a little something's changed about me, a little makeover, shall we say. Well, before I get stuck into making the wings, let me tell you what this look is all about. This is a cosplay from Life Makeover, who sponsored this video. Life Makeover is a limitless dress-up and social simulation game. What really impressed me is just the sheer level of detail in these creations, down to the individual stitch. And I haven't even mentioned the other aspects like crafting your ideal home and the immersive stories. This look in particular was inspired by the 6-star clothing Lord of Abyss that comes online now. There was so much detail in this design that I was excited even just to make a simplified version of it. With the floating skirt layers, swirling filigree, all the sharp edges sparkling with frost. And look at this little guy. Look at him. The new version of Life Makeover, Daybreak Overwatch, comes online for a limited time from February 28th to March 19th. Thank you so much to Life Makeover for sponsoring this one, and I hope you guys enjoyed seeing a little bit of this project as well. Click the link in the description below to download Life Makeover now. I don't want to get change out of this now. I feel so pretty. Also, look, I can make the wings do this. While I would love to stay in that ball gown for this whole video just for the aesthetic, I need to get stuck into some crafting, so I'm back in my boring casual clothes. But the first thing I need to think about is how I'm gonna hold these on my back. So I need like a harness or something like that. I'm gonna use the same trick I've done in the past with my Lilith video, which is going to an op shop, buying a backpack. It's got like lovely padded straps and like a padded back panel, so it's already instantly comfy. I don't have to craft it. And you know, it came from an op shop, so it's cheap and it's probably environmentally friendly because, I mean, it would probably go to landfill anyway. It's actually a really good quality zipper on this. I'm gonna see if I can salvage these for a future project. With the main part of the backpack cut off, I'm just taking this for a quick test drive. I just want to make sure it fits me okay and everything's sitting nicely and I can still move my arms. It turns out a lot of fishing rods just unscrew and I had no idea, but this is gonna make it really easy so I can use just the tips of them. I didn't realize that some of these fishing rods still have a hook attached. So, you know, safety tip if you guys want to make something out of fishing rods, rods, look for a hook first and cut that off because that could have been disastrous. The one thing I didn't anticipate with the fishing rods is they're all slightly different lengths because of course I've just bought some secondhand ones. These two are the closest I could find, like I've just screwed them off the handle, so this is just the tips. Anyway, but these are the closest I could find to the length that I want, and you can see this one's way longer. Now, apparently there are some ways to cut like fiberglass fishing rods safely. I don't think I have the equipment for it, and I don't want to do like a bazillion years worth of research into how to do it safely. I think I have a way that I can use these two pieces and still have them look the same length.
For the wing base, I've got some heavy duty armature wire which I've bent into shape, and I'm going to heavily reinforce these top joints, kind of like shoulders, with just a ton of scrap warbler, just so that this area here doesn't flex too much.
That's what we got for now. The next part is that spare warbler I'm going to wrap around the base of my fishing rod here, and that leftover wire that's sticking out, I can wrap it with it to create that next joint. All right, that's not a bad start. So I've got my two wing joints here and here on both sides, and now you can kind of see what I was talking about when like I wanted to keep this shorter. So this length from here upwards on both sides is the same. This excess length, realistically, this part here will all be covered in feathers, so I'm hoping I can kind of hide it within there.
To attach this to my backpack, I'm just gonna whip stitch around the wire just to hold it in place, while I sew over the top of that some really heavy duty strapping, doing a ton of zigzag stitch on either side of the wire here.
You know, the smart thing to do here would have been to do these straps before I attached all this to it, because now I'm not actually sure if I can fit this in my sewing machine. This is literally like against this wall of the sewing machine, so I'm only just fitting this in. I broke a needle. I went slightly too far back and hit the wire. That's on me. It's not my neatest stitching ever, of course, but all it really needs to do is kind of just reinforce the frame to stay on the backpack. I just have like some standard armature wire for this one, and my plan here is at the end of this section here, of course, because it's an ex-fishing rod, it's still got these little loops in it, so I can stick my wire straight through there, and I can just bend this round, and that should be enough to at least like hold it in place for now. I think we're starting to get to the stage where I can't get away with being in this tiny room and showing you guys how this looks. So I'm actually going to try this on where I've got a bit more space. That's how they're sitting. They're light as heck. There's nothing on them. Okay, so this is Isolon foam or Isolon foam. I don't know how to pronounce it, but from the research I've done, it's a very common material for using in like wings or like giant flowers. And it's got a kind of EVA foam appearance. It's not EVA foam, it's super, super light. I have a feeling that the payoff is going to be it's not as easy to manipulate or paint. That's fine.
You can see I drew on a rough wing shape with like a silver gel pen just before I cut this out, just so I can kind of envision what kind of size this wing is going to be. Also, I haven't looked too deeply into this, but I believe that Isolon or Isolon is actually the brand, but there's loads of different foams that are like this, that have that really light texture that's a little bit softer than a lot of EVA foams. Honestly, some of the really thin, light EVA foams would serve the same purpose, so don't worry too much about getting this specific type if you're trying this for yourself.
All right, that's draping a lot. Oh, that might be the backpack, hang on. No, that's not the backpack. That's draping quite a lot. So I guess I'm gonna need a lot more reinforcement than I thought I would. I underestimated the strength of these things, or I underestimated the weight of this thing. Oh man. Damn it. Okay, so it's been about 4 hours and I got a bit carried away, right? Because we know that that harness was not going to work. There was just too much bend going on, particularly like even at the shoulder point, which is the one place we don't want that much flex. So went into my garage, had a good few hours crafting. I'm sorry I didn't film it. I just really wanted to get it done while the idea was in my head. But I have here a new sort of plate, which I'm going to attach to my backpack bit like this. And this is literally just a nice thick piece of chipboard, like basically just wood. I've got a couple of bolts through here. These are just door hinges, copper door hinges. And this is going to form the first piece, which is PVC pipe that I've just cut to length. And I've used a heat gun on the end here to soften it up to the point where I can press it flat so it can attach to the hinges. But the reason I did this is so that like I can wear it with the wings directly out to the side, and I can push them back if I want to like go through a door or something like that, or if I want to get like a nice photo in a profile sort of shot from the side. My plan plan is still to go fishing rod here, and I might see if I can find more fishing rod to be like the third piece as well, because that wire is clearly not quite cutting it. I'm gonna get a bunch of bolts to bolt this piece onto my backpack here so it's nice and secure, and put together the rest of the frame and hope that it works a bit better this time. We'll see.
To secure the fishing rods, I drilled a hole through the PVC pipe that was only just big enough and then just slowly started pushing it through. I kind of wish I just drilled a bigger hole because I ended up slamming my hand into the PVC pipe, which was not a fun time for my fingers. Anyway, with the fishing rods now in position, I basically just chucked a ton of hot glue into the pipe end to kind of clog up around those holes so that the fishing rod couldn't move in or out. And the rest was just wrapping it up with a heavy duty cloth tape. For this bit, I hadn't realized that my microphone battery had run out, so you get voiceover Charlotte instead. Basically, I managed to get another pair of fishing rods. These are kids rods, so they're a little bit smaller and they're the same size, which is great. I attached these to the middle fishing rod sections just using a ton of Worbler that I wrapped tightly around it. While it didn't quite work for reinforcing the shoulders earlier, I'm hoping that it'll work fine this time just because it's at the wingtip, so there's not much weight on it.
Okay, however many hours later we are, test round number 2. This is looking fantastic. I'm so happy. Look at this. Look at how it moves. Oh my God, it's just floating around. The hinge works so freaking well. And again, there's like no weight on this. The trade-off was that I had to cut off a lot of the bulk of this black base towards the wingtip, because of course I was trying to go for longer wings towards the end like a real bird, because that's where of course I'd have those wing feathers. The problem is that it doesn't really work so with cosplay wings, because I'm wanting to have all of these areas here the most thin and flexible, and I can't also have that have the most amount of weight, because of course then it's just going to droop at the end there because there's not enough support there, if that makes sense. The movement is more important to me than having like the shape be longer at the end. So I'm happy with this. If I can, once I cut out all my feathers with the white foam and I layer this up, if I can get away with it, I'll try and put some of the longer feathers at the tip again to extend it and see if I can get away with that without it like weighing down the frame, just because that white foam is so much lighter than this black stuff.
So it's time to cut out a ton of the feathers out of the Isolon foam. So I'm just literally using this like really simple elliptical shape. Because Lute's wings are relatively cartoony, I'm not too worried about them being like a realistic shape. And the black feathers will all be for the back of the wing, so they won't really be seen that often. It's currently almost 11 p.m. So it's about time to go to bed, but I have cut out a giant pile of these black ones. I'm gonna need like probably 3 times as many when it comes to the white feathers, but I think this will probably do for my black feathers. I'm gonna go lay them out on the wings and have a look, but I think this is looking pretty promising. This is them laid out against the wing. Even if I go all out with the feathers on this side, that pretty much covers it. And for every feather I put down here, I've added another one to this pile here for wing number 2 over here. And I've got some spare over here, so I'm definitely good on the black. Okay. It's the next day and it's time to start on the white feathers. So this stuff here is, I think it's called polycell packing foam. It's really, really thin and it's kind of a little bit translucent as well, which means I might have to layer up the feathers a fair bit. And it's just like crazy light. If I tear off a piece like this strip here, if I hold that at the end, it basically holds its shape as in. It's literally just feather light. There's nothing to it. And I've seen quite a few people using those like dance wings where they're just so light and floaty, use this foam, which is why I got this. No, don't fall. Ah. No, don't. Oh, God damn it. Oh, fuck. We're good, we're okay, everything's fine. I'm just gonna try and cut out some really big ones first, because I think like I can cut out the big ones and then with like the excess random bits of foam that are left afterwards, I can try and cut out the smaller ones in that gap. So I'm minimizing the amount of product that's going to waste here. Okay, so that's 3 feathers. That's a good start. I've also noticed that like the foam has got like slight ridges on it across. So I'm trying to like keep those lines going across the feathers as well. Like the leftover ends up being this kind of spidery strips. I'm probably gonna like shovel this in a bag and keep it for a while, because I definitely have like an instinct that I can do something with this, whether it's like a filler or like a texture of some sort, like using in a background, I don't know. They're looking good. My concern is the fact that they are so thin on their own and kind of like a little bit see-through, that against like the black
base or like the back of her wings, it's gonna look a little bit gray. So like, let me show you. Black fabric foam, and then you have this against it. It's not actually too bad, especially like in the light and from further away. So I think what I'm gonna do is when I cut the black base into actual feather shapes, I'm going to like attach it properly and spray the underside of this with white Plastidip, which should hopefully give like a nice white base for the white feathers to go across. Okay, quick test run. Isolon foam, when you heat it up, like EVA foam, for example, it is a bit more moldable and can hold different shapes. So I've blasted this with a heat gun, and all I've done is like fold it through the middle a little bit and let it dry with the edges curving up just to give it a bit of dimension. And you can see I've cut a couple of little notches in there. That kind of sells the idea that this is a feather and not just like a big long elliptical shape. I'm gonna leave it nice and simple and just do that for all of my black feathers. So my two black base wings have now been cut into some feathery shapes. I'm gonna take these outside and see if it'll take some Plastidip on the backside. I've also got a little bit of offcuts of the white. I'm just gonna test out some spray paint on these as well. Oh girls. Hey, Miss B.
If we go out to the garage, we have to pay the seed tax on the way past. It's the law. We're spraying the front of the wing base with white Plastidip just to give it a white base. You could probably just use any white spray paint. I don't know why I chose to use Plastidip for this part. Also, this is like the worst and laziest technique for spraying ever. So I apologize to any pro cosplayers that see this and are judging my technique.
I've got my base piece down here ready to go. I've got all of my like finished feathers down here on the floor with me. So I'm gonna try this quick dry adhesive that I've got. The glue seems to be holding pretty well. I just wanted to make sure that it was going to dry fast enough that I can just go straight away and layer up these feathers without having to wait for anything to dry. And then it's not like toxic enough that I have to wear a respirator for hours. So yeah, I think we're good to go.
I think I've got a pretty good eye for like the dimensions and proportions of wings, but if you're really struggling to get those details right, I would suggest like constantly referring back to like a reference image, even just like an image of a bird in flight.
Okay, so I've got my two base parts done. Feathers looking pretty good. They look a little bit flat and cartoony still. That is because like I've gone for the minimum amount of feathers that I could possibly do to kind of like cover the space, just because I want to keep these as light as possible and prioritize the white feathers that are going to go on the other side now. So I can put these aside. I got to work out what I'm doing with those white feathers. Okay, so trying to research this foam, I can't find a solid answer as to whether or not it's safe to like try and heat it up to heat form it in the same way as you would EVA foam. But I have found if you like fold it and stretch it at the same time, you can kind of get like a bit of a curve and a groove through the center, which I think will be enough to give some of the larger feathers a bit of dimension as I layer them up. Okay, welcome back to the floor zone, guys. We are ready to rumble with attaching the black base to the frame here. Okay, I know it might seem a little bit dodgy that it's pretty much held onto the frame with masking tape and a bit of glue right now, but firstly, these wings are so crazy light, and secondly, there is going to be like a reinforcing strip of foam all the way along the top before I'm finished with this. So the next step here is going to be getting all the white feathers onto the wings. Before I do that, I'm going to go change into some more floor-friendly clothes because I keep worrying I'm going to bend over too much or my skirt's going to flip up, and I'm tripping over my skirts as I'm going, so I'll be right back. All right, before we start sticking on the feathers, please admire my jumpsuit. It's an owl. Okay, now we can do feathers.
Now, I didn't get any footage of this, but I sprayed the backside of most of these feathers with a white spray paint just to make them a little bit more opaque. Gluing and layering the feathers is actually the easy part. It's just that it takes forever.
Okay, just want to do a quick test run of the wing before I do the second wing layer, just to make sure I'm happy with how it's sitting. Yes! Oh my goodness, look at that. That movement, like it's so floaty and lovely. That's exactly what I was after. Oh, this is gonna look fantastic, and they're so massive. I'm very happy, guys. Okay, let's do some more crafting.
I know I just talked about the movement, but I'm gonna repeat myself here because again, like I'm incredibly happy with this. I did not expect to get the movement this good, like the first time I tried making some of these wings. I was just incredibly happy at this moment, guys.
Okay, it's the next day. Welcome back to the floor zone. I got one wing of the second set of feathers done last night. So I'm gonna start again on this side and then just work my way up. And maybe by about lunchtime I'll have finished all the white feathers. I did discover last night that like even with the layer of spray paint, these feathers are still a little bit too translucent, but I have found if I like glue 2 feathers together, that's pretty much perfect, like nice and opaque. So I have been doubling them up as I go. I think it's worth it. It'll look nice in the end. Let's get to more feathers. I'm way past the age where I can just scrabble around on the floor without having a sore back, so I'm gonna be taking lots of breaks. Okay, we've migrated from the floor zone to the driveway zone because I'm about to put a absolute ton of contact adhesive on this, and I really didn't want to like fumigate my whole lounge room. So the wings for feathers are all done. The only thing left is that big, thick, like stripe of black along the top. So I do want to do this one with contact adhesive just to make sure that that top layer is nice and anchoring everything into place, if that makes sense. So I guess I just got to measure it out.
And of course by measure it out, I mean just sort of lay the wing on top and cut it out in vaguely the right shape. But luck was on my side today because I pretty much nailed the shape on the first try, and once this was glued down, the basic shape of the wings was done. Okay, we've gone from the driveway zone to the garage zone because I need to paint the stripes on Lute's wings, which I kind of have to do with spray paint, and it's really windy today. I think if I try and do that on the driveway, the wind is going to pick up the feathers. I'm going to end up spray painting the wrong section. I'm going to cry and scream and throw up, and it's not going to be a fun time for anyone. But right now my chickens are yelling at me because I haven't paid the seed tax yet. I know, my girls. Okay, even in here, the wind is like picking up some of these feathers, but I'm not a patient person. I'm not gonna wait for like tomorrow or something to spray paint these. So if it turns out terribly, you can all tell me that you told me so. And being the rational individual I am, I'm using black plastic because I literally don't have a black spray paint and do not want to go drive to Bunnings to buy one. I swear the amount of cans I use of this stuff, they should really sponsor me at this point. I mean, it turned out good. I just kind of wanted to add like a little bit more mess to the lines. I didn't want them to look too uniform. I want it to feel organic.
Spray painting is done. Stripes are looking pretty good. There's a couple more details I want to try and add to these wings. One of them is to like cut the notches in like I did for the black feathers on the underside. So I'm just going to go through and just cut little notches out of all the feathers. Okay, I'm running a tester way down here, which will be sitting at my back. So if I stuff this up, it's not going to be really very noticeable. Essentially, I kind of want to do like an outline like this, just along all of the feathers. And so this I've got like a kind of cool gray marker, and I think just like a little tiny bit of that on each one is just going to create like a little bit of shading and help it look a little bit less flat and just make them pop and define each of the feathers.
Sadly, I only lasted like 2 feathers before realizing the marker presses too hard into the foam and actually ends up pulling some of the paint off underneath and ruining the marker tip in the process. So I ended up switching to a slightly watered down gray acrylic paint.
Okay, quick side-by-side comparison here, guys. This side has no shading at this stage. This side does, so you can kind of see the main difference is just that the feathers pop a little bit. They look very subtly different, but it's just enough to define each of those feathers and make it pop. Coming in for a closer look, you might notice that some of these feathers have kind of got like 2 different shades of gray on here. That's because after I went over these ones with the acrylic watered down paint, I actually remembered I had these, which is a marker, but it's called a brush marker. It seems to have like a much softer tip, so it actually worked really well against the foam, unlike the Copic marker earlier. So I think between the two, it just made like an extra bit of shading there.
And with the shading and notches complete, we have a fully complete functioning set of wings. I really hope you guys like how these look. I'll show you a little bit more of it at the end of the video, but this is a Lute cosplay, so still got a little bit of stuff to do.
I did some really big wings on my eyeliner to celebrate the fact that I've just finished off some really big wings. Anyway, this was supposed to be a short video just focusing on the wings, but I did decide to do like a rapid 2-day build of this cosplay, just because I can't help myself apparently. So I am just going to rapid fire off the most noteworthy processes so we can hurry along to the reveal part.
So the mask and the helmet were just layers of a thick EVA foam I heated up and just like pressed over one of my mannequin heads to kind of form it into a face shape. The horns were a much thinner EVA foam. Luckily I had enough scrap pieces that I could make 4 of this particular shape. We're going to heat one up and just use your hands to sort of heat form it to curl all around that edge. Do the same to do another piece of this one, just curling it in the other direction, and then we're just gonna glue it together with some contact adhesive. With the foam pattern forming that curly bit at the end, I extended these horns down just by gluing a piece of EVA foam around it as a roll. Cutting out the mask features left me with this terrifying thing. More EVA foam sheets to build up the structure around the mask, and we're just gonna glue those horns straight to the top. For my sick halo, that armature wire that I bought for the wings originally came in handy, and I just had an existing foam dowel that I just glued around this to form a slightly thicker halo. For the eyes, I've got some layers of tulle and organza that I've glued together. It's transparent enough that I can see through it, but solid enough that it looks like a plain white light through the mask. I'm using the same materials for the toothy grin as well. I found this white rope in my giant box of like trim and twine, and it was the perfect size to line the horns with and to do some outlines on the teeth and eyes. Quick coat of silver spray paint for the top of the helmet. Now for her neck piece, to me it looks like a cowl or something made of scale mail or lamella. I had some leftover charcoal fabric from a tunic that I also made for this cosplay. So with that sewn together, I'm just layering up these thin pieces of EVA foam that I've spray painted very lightly with some silver.
And that about does it. I know I've glossed over a lot of these parts, so if there's anything in here that you really do want to know more about, please just leave a comment below. I will try and read most of the comments, so I'll reply when I can if you guys have got questions. But now comes the actual fun part where you can just put the whole thing on and see this thing come to life.
Between the helmet being far too small and the tunic being the most unflattering cut I've ever made, I kind of think the rest of the cosplay sucks a bit, but these wings do look amazing. In fact, I just liked it enough that I just kind of remade a lot of it. I redid the helmet to be a larger size, I redid the skirt to be a more flattering cut, and I added in some thigh-high boots. Definitely a huge improvement this time round. As with any cosplay, there's definitely still some room for improvement, but it was definitely worth the extra couple of days updating the costume. And most importantly, the whole thing is surprisingly comfortable. Everything just moves really, really well. I could genuinely like run a marathon in these.
Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed seeing this project come to life. And if you end up trying to build your own wings, please let me know how you go. I do think that like a lot of cosplay is more collaborative than we realize when we're sort of taking inspiration from each other and like building off each other's ideas. I definitely think I'm onto something with this fishing rod concept though. If you liked it, please click all the buttons, leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe, notification bell, all of those YouTubey things. Thank you again to Life Makeover for sponsoring this one. Remember, you can click the link in the description below to download the game. A huge thank you to my top tier patrons, my ultimate supporters: Artemis, Dakota, Rakishan, Residual Images, Tamara, Tim, and Yuri. You guys are absolutely amazing as always. I could not do this without you. Thank you also to these other amazing patrons whose names are appearing on screen now. If you want to be smart and cool and funny like these people, you can join us over on Patreon. Supporting me on Patreon is honestly the best way you can support what I do and help me keep making big, weird, and wonderful projects. I post previews, behind the scenes, work in progress, and a bunch of other goodies over there, so please come and join us. Thank you guys again so much. I cannot wait to see you in the next one. Bye!